Welcome to IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don.
Coming at you live from San Francisco, California.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting edition of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Vaughn Smith, and this is Cisco CCNA for exam 200-301. We're in our Networking Components mini-series, and in this episode, we're going to take a look at Next Generation Firewall and Next Generation IPS. Yes, I had to use some notes on that one because that's a lot of words and a lot of letters. But luckily, we have Mr. Ronnie Wong to help us sort all of that out. Hello, how are you doing?
I am doing well, Vaughn. Thank you again for joining me as we continue through our little mini-series together. We've already talked about the idea of routers and switches, and now we're moving into this other topic. It is quite a mouthful, right? You normally hear the term NGFW for Next Generation Firewall and NGIPS for Next Generation IPS as well. So we'll actually be taking a look at the roles and functions there too.
Yeah, that was a lot of letters, and you told me, like, oh, just go ahead and say Next Generation. I'm like, okay, that makes it a little bit easier. But this is something, I mean, I understand the basic idea of a firewall, but this Next Generation thing, what does that all mean?
Yeah. All right, so Vaughn, that's a great question because most of the time when we start talking about this idea, we really don't understand what it actually means here. When we start talking about the idea of next generation, it's fairly simple in this sense, right? Traditional firewalls and even intrusion prevention systems, they really do their job based on definitions that they end up learning, right? So they can learn a little bit, but they actually only can learn what they encounter to a point. So they don't get any other additional information that's actually possibly out there, right now that other people already know about, okay? That can help them become more effective. The next generation type of firewall, as well as intrusion prevention systems, they are not only informed by what they encounter in terms of different traffic, but they're also informed by another intelligence that's out there. It's starting to sound like an alien movie, Vaughn, for just a moment. But it actually is connected to systems that are out there, and that means you have to provide a subscription to ensure that those things update and that they communicate with this other system that's out there. So for us here, when we start talking about this Cisco type of next generation firewall and IPSs, all this is actually going to be informed by the idea of what we call TALIS, which is, of course, Cisco's security intelligence service that's out there.
It almost sounds like you're having your firewalls read the news.
Yes.
It's like, okay, we're going to go ahead and let you know what's going on out there in the world, and that way you can learn about it and then take measures to protect yourself.
Yeah, and Vaughn, it's a great way to actually think about it. The very fact is, not only are we concerned anymore about just preventing attacks, right? The idea here behind these devices is that we want what we call full visibility of not only our networks, but of understanding the idea of the threats that are out there, okay? Of understanding what it is that can actually help us to ensure that they don't come against us as well. So Vaughn, this type of information and systems that these things can do is quite advanced in all the things that it's doing. It can even prevent attacks before they happen. And that's the key, is that we actually have the idea of prevention before it happens. We have the idea of actually mitigating attacks as they happen. But also in the end, Vaughn, we want to be able to spot within our networks if an attack has happened and we follow that through to the end result. So if something even gets through all that, how do we actually spot it when it's also already made it past our systems? And then what is the ultimate resolution? And then we take that information, and that now adds in that body of knowledge that we can feed out to the rest of the systems that are out there, and then they can learn from it as well. So Vaughn, this is actually really not only getting information from a global intelligence, but also contributing to it as well.
I'm thinking more like being more proactive rather than just reactive.
That's exactly what's going on, and that's because today's types of intrusions that are out there, right, include ransomware, malware, you name it, all different types of attacks that you've probably read about and heard about in the last, couple of years have become so much more advanced that where we want to stop them is not when it hits our particular devices, Vaughn, but it's when they don't even hit yet, and we're starting to spot patterns and different things that are happening. So let's take a look at the diagram that we began with at the beginning here, and we'll talk about where we normally see these devices. So Vaughn, we can actually purchase the idea of a next generation firewall as an appliance if we choose to, and we normally would put it somewhere like right here, okay? Right in between the router and the switches that we have, and this will give us the intelligence that we need to be able to do what we want to do here, okay? So in its particular function of what it, or in its particular role, right, it really provides, at least at the very basics, right, the idea of inline protection, okay, between the outside of our network and between the inside of our network. And this is true whether we're talking about the next generation firewall or the next generation IPS. Essentially, though, it's all combined into one single appliance or one single product at this point, whether we're talking about both NGFW or NGIPS. I know a lot of acronym that's actually right there, but that's how you'll probably see it written a lot of times as we start doing this, okay? So when we start to actually see something like this, right, the key here is to understand that at the very beginning, okay, of what it does is functionality, is it does the same basic stateful packet inspection, right? It says, look, hey, we'll actually do the same things here that a regular firewall would do. As long as traffic originates from the inside, goes to the outside, and comes back in, perfectly fine. We inspect that, and we actually ensure that that happens. Anything else gets blocked automatically. But the idea of adding intrusion prevention in there now puts an inline system with whatever it has there to inspect every single packet or every single bit of information that goes through to do what we actually need it to make a decision of whether or not it's going to be blocked in real time to do what it needs to do. The idea also, of course, now contributes to what we call awareness, okay? That idea of being able to have awareness, it is saying, hey, we can actually control possible risky applications that have also gotten inside of our network as well, okay? Or now actually present itself. So as someone clicks on a link, hopefully it doesn't actually lead to some type of social engineering that opens a back door. With most of these systems, a lot of times, usually what we hope for is that idea of awareness where we realize that something risky is starting to go on as it comes through the firewall as well. The other aspect of doing something that we call next generation technology is that it doesn't require you to buy a new device every time that it upgrades. That new thing comes out, you can upgrade the system that you already have that's available. And then, of course, addressing what we call evolving security threats. And that means that the way that systems are actually done today is that it not only takes a look at what past threats look like, but it even begins to try and predict what is possible in the future and what the advanced threat may look like at this particular point in time as well. Okay, so Vaughn, whether we're talking about the idea of the intrusion prevention or the intrusion or the firewall in terms of next generation, that's what it does for us. It provides for us visibility. It gives us good performance by not allowing us to actually worry about it too much because of the way that it works based off of the ASICs that are also in there. Threat protection, but even more importantly, the idea of context of when this stuff happens and where it tends to happen. And of course, that idea of the added in need that we have, which is Talus, which gives us better visibility in everything that we do. Now, Vaughn, it's hard for us to understand what actually happens, but I want to take a look at both of these systems in the realm of what we call visibility, okay? Because I think that that helps us to explain what they do better. And all this is now done instead of actually individual devices that you have to manage one at a time. It's all actually combined underneath what we call the Cisco Firepower Management Center, okay? So sometimes you hear it called the Cisco FMC, okay? So that's where it's actually done. And I've got a demonstration here that I want to at least show you. I'm not going to go through every step of the demonstration, but I at least want to show you what it can show us as well. So let's take a look at my screen, and I'll zoom in as we go through, okay? So this, Vaughn, that we see here on the screen is a dashboard summary, okay? And we can't see every single thing that's out there, but we can actually see a lot. Right now, Vaughn, I'm actually selected on intrusion events. Now, Vaughn, this particular system that I'm on here is actually being informed by Talus itself, and we can see so much from Talus on this one device. The top attackers that are out there, I can see it by source IP address. I can see what's actually happening, where it's actually coming from. I can also see within this particular device here, the top targets it's actually going to and its destination within its networks, even some over there in China somewhere and some of these other places that we also see. We can even take a look at the idea of intrusion events based on a level, okay, that they've actually set up from 0 through 4. And you can see that here that we actually have that particular idea where we see in the last hour here how many different intrusion events have been detected and how they've been rated inside of the system by using these numbers here on terms of this rating system. As I'm trying to scroll through some of the other ones here so that we can see this on top of my head here. You can see total events by application protocols. Notice that SNMP seems to actually be what's the intrusion that's actually detecting. DNS, you name it, impact. Let me scroll on down here through some of the different ones. Oh, even total events by the actual users that may actually have something like this. Okay, so Vaughn, that's a lot that we can see. Now, on top of that, if I now go over into analysis, okay, so this actually gives us the analysis of what we're taking a look at, and I do the context exploration here. See if I can select that. And we'll just give it a moment. Now, because this is actually a cloud device, it can take a little bit of time to actually kind of load in and do what we can do. But I'll show you just something else, and hopefully this stuff will load by the time I get to it, but it may not. So
we're in the firewall right now. We're
Yep.
in like a next generation
Firewall and IPS.
We're
Yep.
looking at all of the analysis and information that it's been gathering and giving it to us in this like widget dashboard format.
Right.
That's
and
pretty
this
cool.
gives us that ability to see it all. Okay. Now, we're not configuring any type of anything here. But, Vaughn, what I want to show you, and of course, like I said, because we're actually in the cloud and it can take a little bit of time, notice this, Vaughn. It talks about indications of compromise. It's not saying that it was compromised, but it's saying, hey, I can see that there's indications that it may have actually been compromised here.
Well, even without the data, just seeing like the actual headings and the different widgets that it is showing us, that's impressive on its own.
Yes.
So I like, this is really neat.
Yeah, it's actually quite more impressive when you do see the data, but it can take like 90 seconds to who knows how long it actually takes for it to populate. And the reason why, Vaughn, is because this is a demonstration, which means I'm not the only person in this demonstration. So it can take a bit of time before anything actually shows up here. But let's also take a look at another option here, which is the idea of intrusions. I'm going to go over to events here, and let's see if I can even find some other things. If it allow me to click. Okay. It actually is changing up there. Oh, there we go. So you can see why it's a little bit more. So intrusion events, we can even see different types of intrusion events and the messages. And here's a WordPress ping back. You name it, it can actually just spot all these different types of things that we can see here. I'm trying to go back to the Context Explorer. I'm hoping that now that something else is populated and appeared, this one will actually now populate. And of course, it's not going to do that.
It's because you want it to. And that's
yeah,
like, nope,
I mean, why would that actually be something that's something else? Okay, let's go to connections here and see. Oh, security intelligence events. Let's see if that one will populate for us in just a moment. There we go. Okay, so at least something did populate, even though my entire dashboard won't populate right now. So here we can see different types of security intelligence in the application details and what it's actually done. So here's an action. It says, I've already taken this action, sinkholing something. It did a DNS block. It actually says, who initiated and the responder, and it even tells you the category. So you can see that there's so much that it can essentially show you on all this stuff. It is amazing in terms of the detail that you get, and that's what we call full visibility. So up here on the top, you can see intrusions, different files that have actually been captured or their trajectory where they're going, hosts, what actually happens here in terms of servers, vulnerabilities, user activities. Let's see if I can zoom in on the indication of compromise for a particular user. So in theory, if everything comes up, but again, you have to kind of wait for it to do the system and what it does here. But if we can essentially see by username sometimes, or what's happened. So indication of compromise, users indication of compromise, malware detected, impact 1, impact 2, that's that level. You can see how many different times it's actually occurred on this network as it's going through. So this demonstration is directly hooked up to the Talos system so that we can see what's going on. So it probably has more data than most will end up seeing, but you do have where you can go through. Then, of course, you can set up different policies. And we're not actually going to set up policies, but this is how we configure it to work, right? We can actually tell it, here's the control, here's the devices that it actually needs to do. And we can even monitor it by the different device management that's out there as well. So here you can see that there's, of course, all of the actual security operations center, and there it is. There's that particular cloud device that we're actually connected to. So the threat defense system, and this is a virtualized system that you can see. And here it is. Notice that there's that next generation IPS that's also virtualized in the cloud. So it gives us that visibility between all of those different ones that are actually out there for us. But the analysis, at least for me, shows me the visibility, and what it does by comparison, okay, is what we want to actually be able to do. So at some point in time, this thing will end up loading, but at least you can see and tell. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, man, at some point this is going to show up, and it's going to show up right after we finish here. So Vaughn, I want to take a look at just briefly here with the few minutes that we have left, right? Notice that we have these systems. Traffic and intrusion over time is what this actually shows us, right? So if I go through here, I can see that if I hover over this, there's an event that's actually happened, and there's the regular traffic that's happened. So Vaughn, at the same time, there's 7,103 events on this particular date at this one time. And it looks like there's a spike of activity right here just a few minutes later, as what we also ended up seeing. And you can also see the regular traffic right here, how much was actually sent across. Indication by host of possible intrusions that have occurred. You can see the type of impact and threat. So notice that this one says malware has been detected here. And this one says indications, 13% of it. Here, another type of intrusion event, attempted user host. This one here is attempted admin type of intrusion. This one here is attempted user, web application attack, attempted admin. So you can see that overall, though, this impact to 54% here shows you what that actually turns out to be. Network indications, see the different operating systems have actually led to what's actually being attacked here. So once again, notice that about 39% of our entire network is running some type of Linux. Another 28% is running Windows. Another one is running Android. And then that breaks down into each one of the different categories there. How much you can actually see is amazing, okay? And what you can actually control as well. Application protocols that are running. Traffic by risk and application. Again, intrusion events by risk and applications. You can see all of these, and this one right here, SNMP, looks like to be the highest one. So all of this can tell you exactly what we need to see at any particular point in time, so we get full visibility into the system that we have to help protect our networks. Okay. Now, is this something that's actually relatively cheap? No. Okay. This is a relatively expensive solution, but it's a great solution, and it all integrates together with all the other products that Cisco has. And that's what they want to build. They want to build an entire ecosystem of these environments. And this also fits into other things that we'll take a look at a little bit later on, such as the Cisco DNA Center and everything else that we have available to us. But Vaughn, that's a good, at least a demonstration to show you why we actually want to use systems like this. And it really is about the visibility and the very fact that we can control the access and get the intelligence that we need all in one place by using things like the next generation firewall and the next generation IPSs.
I like how you left to the very end. Yeah, it's probably not that cheap. So.
No, it's not that cheap.
But it looks like what you get what you pay for, because that was a lot of great information that can be really beneficial to you,
right,
knowing what's going on with your network. And really, it's kind of teaching itself.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe you get what you pay for. All right. Well, thank you so much for that great information, Ronnie. Thank you all for watching, but we're going to go ahead and sign off for IT Pro TV. I've been your host, Vaughn Smith.
And I'm Ronnie Wong.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.